rapper from Jamaica, and she brought a friend, a gifted young superstar in his own right. The song on the 550 music label is entitled Scent of Attraction. Ladies and gentlemen, Patra and Mr. Aaron Hall.
She was the Queen of Dancehall, the woman who shattered barriers and brought Jamaican music to the world stage. In the early 90s, Patra wasn't just another artist on the charts. She was history in the making. With gold records, iconic collaborations, and a voice that could electrify a stadium, it seemed like nothing could stop her rise. But behind the flashing lights and roaring crowds, a much darker reality was taking shape. Within a single decade, the same woman who once performed alongside Tupac and dominated international charts would be sitting in a Jamaican jail cell, accused of betraying the very community that once lifted her up. What happened in between wasn't just a story of fame and downfall. It was a story of survival, secrets, and the heavy price of success in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. Dorothy Smith grew up far from the spotlight, a church choir girl from rural Westmoreland, Jamaica. But even as a teenager, her ambition was bigger than her surroundings. At just 15, she transformed herself into Lady Patra, an emerging dancehall DJ with rapid-fire lyrics and a stage presence that couldn't be ignored. Her cousin suggested the name Patra, inspired by Cleopatra, the Egyptian queen who commanded empires, and the title fit perfectly. By 1992, she had dropped the lady and became simply Patra, the self-declared queen of the pack. That same year, at the legendary Sting Festival, she delivered a performance so powerful that Epic Records executives signed her almost immediately. Her debut single, Queen of the Pack, exploded, climbing the charts, while tracks like Worker Man and Romantic Call, featuring West Coast rapper Yo-Yo, and even a young Tupac in the music video, cemented her status as a rising global star. For 13 straight weeks, her debut album sat at #1 on the reggae charts, breaking records and making her the first Jamaican woman to dominate that space. She was barely 20, gold certified, and already being hailed as the female Shabba Ranks. It was a meteoric rise, but as Patra would soon discover, fame in the music industry came with hidden costs that no one had warned her about. For many fans, Patra's success looked like a dream come true. But behind the curtain, the music industry had its own rules. The parties, the late-night calls from executives, the endless collaborations that weren't always about music. It was a dangerous world for young women, especially those coming from humble beginnings. Invitations to VIP rooms came with unspoken expectations. Powerful men saw female artists not as equals, but as conquests. Every opportunity seemed tied to a demand that went far beyond singing or performing. It was in this environment that Patra received a call in 1995. Aaron Hall, the lead singer from Guy and one of the biggest names in R&B at the time, wanted her on his new project. On paper, it was a dream collaboration. Hall was New Jack Swing royalty, the voice behind hits like Groove Me and I Like. A feature with him could push Patra further into the American mainstream, opening doors beyond reggae and dancehall. But stepping into that studio session wasn't just another career move. It would become one of the turning points that derailed everything. The recording for Scent of Attraction took place in a private New Jersey studio. At first glance, it seemed normal. Aaron Hall was charming, complimentary about her voice, even supportive. But something about the atmosphere felt off. The engineer suddenly disappeared for a long break. Hall's compliments lingered too long. His hands didn't move away quickly enough. The kind of subtle cues women in the industry learn to recognize immediately. What happened behind those closed doors has never been publicly detailed, but what's clear is that Patra walked out of that session changed. On the surface, she smiled for the cameras, completed the track, and even promoted the single. Scent of Attraction climbed to the Ho 100, peaking at number 82. But soon after, Patra began retreating. She stopped appearing as frequently, her once energetic performances slowed, and her presence in interviews grew distant. Fans assumed it was just a creative lull. Insiders whispered about label disputes or personal issues, but many noticed the timing. Patra's spark seemed to fade right after her time with Hall, and rumors would later circulate online suggesting that something devastating had happened in that studio, something that silenced her more effectively than any critic ever could. By the late 90s, Patra had nearly vanished from the mainstream. Her third album, The Great Escape, released in 2003, barely made an impact. She stopped accepting interview requests, ignored industry parties, and canceled shows without explanation. Friends described her as paranoid, constantly scanning rooms as though she expected something or someone to appear. Her signature braids, once a symbol of confidence and sexuality, now seemed heavy, weighing her down. Financially, things were crumbling too. Despite gold records and chart-topping singles, record label accounting left her with very little money. Ongoing legal battles over contracts drained what savings she had. Back home in Jamaica, her family depended on her income, but there was nothing left to give. Industry insiders chalked it up to bad management, but Patra herself hinted at something deeper, speaking vaguely in interviews about needing to heal and find her spiritual center before returning to music. By then, the Queen of Dancehall wasn't just missing from the charts, she was disappearing into herself. And as desperation grew, she made choices that would change her legacy forever. In 2003, with money running out and opportunities drying up, Patra devised a scheme. Meeting with struggling Jamaican musicians, she promised what so many of them dreamed of: international opportunities. With her name and reputation, it was believable. She claimed she had connections who could secure UK visas and social security cards, opening the door to careers abroad. The price wasn't cheap, but these were artists desperate to escape poverty. Over the course of 13 months, 10 musicians handed over their savings, more than $1 million Jamaican dollars combined. They delivered cash to the security desk of her home in Bogue Village, trusting the star they'd once idolized. But the documents never came. The visas never arrived. By April 2005, the truth came crashing down. Patra was arrested on fraud charges, her bail set at $500,000 Jamaican dollars. Victims testified about threats and intimidation they received after coming forward, making the case even darker. For fans, it was almost impossible to reconcile. The same woman who once sang about empowerment and independence was now accused of stealing from her own community. But while Patra's fall from grace shocked many, the shadows hanging over Aaron Hall's past would reveal an even more disturbing side of the story. While Patra sat in a Jamaican courtroom, Aaron Hall was still living comfortably in New Jersey, but his reputation was starting to unravel. Stories that insiders had whispered for years began surfacing in public. One of the most explosive came from Gloria Velez, a well-known video model, who revealed that she began a relationship with Hall when she was just 16. Hall himself would later brag about their encounters in interviews, dismissing her as a puppy when he realized her true age. Gloria accused him of violence, neglect, and predatory behavior, even releasing a diss track against him. And that was only the beginning. In 2023, a federal lawsuit named Hall and Sean Diddy Combs in shocking allegations of assault dating back to the early 90s. The lawsuit claimed that underage girls were targeted, coerced, and assaulted during industry after-parties. One of the women described being attacked by Hall while Diddy waited in another room. When legal papers were served, Hall vanished. His lawyers claimed they couldn't locate him, even requesting permission to notify him through newspaper ads. The timeline of these accusations lined up almost perfectly with Patra's peak years. Online forums speculated that she too had been one of his victims. While never confirmed, the whispers were loud enough to make people wonder, was Patra's downfall just bad choices, or the result of something far more sinister? Patra never publicly accused Aaron Hall of anything, but her actions told their own story. She avoided working with major male R&B artists after 1995, retreated from mainstream collaborations, and spoke more about healing than performing. Industry insiders noticed the shift, but said nothing. The unspoken rule in the 90s was that men were protected, while women who complained were silenced. To survive, many artists adapted by playing the same game they had once been victims of. And in Patra's case, her 2003 visa fraud scheme seemed like a dark reflection of the industry itself. She had seen firsthand how powerful men exploited trust and desperation. Years later, facing her own crisis, she applied the same methods, convincing struggling musicians to believe in promises that were never real. In many ways, Patra's story mirrored the system she came from. Victims becoming perpetrators, survival turning into exploitation. By the time allegations against Hall and other powerful men finally reached the public decades later, Patra's career was already destroyed. The system had failed her as a victim and then punished her as a criminal. Patra's journey is one of the most dramatic rises and falls in dancehall history. From church choir girl to global superstar, she carried the pride of Jamaica onto international stages, only to watch it unravel into scandal and betrayal. The fraud charges may have defined her downfall, but the deeper truth is harder to ignore. She was a woman navigating one of the most dangerous industries in the world, where predators thrived and victims were left broken. Whether Patra was directly a victim of Aaron Hall will likely never be confirmed, but her career trajectory tells its own story. She went from unstoppable energy to silence, from empowerment to disappearance. And that silence still echoes today. Was she simply a fallen star who made terrible choices? Or was she another casualty of an industry that has hidden its darkest secrets for decades? The answer lies somewhere in between, in a place where success and survival often blur together, and where the truth is rarely spoken out loud.